I went to debunk these myths about what the Arctic looked like and sounded like. There's this idea that it's just white and it's ice and but it's ice in all these different forms. It's various degrees of water melting and frozen and it's so varietal, not only in appearance, visual appearance, but in sound. And that's what I went to do, was to gather something that the everyday person who doesn't live up there would experience and bring that back as part of a larger discussion. Hi, I'm Mary Edwards, and I'm entering a world gone good for the second time.
Well, hello, my name is Steve, and here we are once again, finding the light in the darkness to prove, as we do week in, week out, there's still good out there and lots of it. This is World Gone Good. If you like the good we got going on, please, yes, share us with your friends. Subscribe to our show where you are listening right now. And hey, why not take a second and give us a rating and review? Every time you do each and every one of these good things, you help more people find this show. And for that, as always, we say thank you. And if that wasn't self-indulgent enough, buckle up, kids. I'm just getting started. Hey, it's a birthday girl's turn. We should say happy birthday, don't you think?
Happy birthday, McKenna!
My first new stage play in 19 years. 19 years opens March 3rd at the Hudson Backstage in Los Angeles. The entire cast just told you the name of the show. It's Happy Birthday, McKenna. It's a dark family comedy, and it includes 1,000 bicycles, 5 stitches, 1 birthday cake on MIA, and so much more that will hopefully make sense, God willing, and you should definitely come see it. Oh, yes, you should. If you're in LA in March, come visit us at hbmtheplay.com. That's Happy Birthday McKenna, hbmtheplay.com for all information and tickets. I'd love to see you at a show. Last episode, Sarah Woodard returned, and guess what? Today, we have another returning good person, my pal, Mary Edwards. I adore Mary. We are both artists in somewhat different ways, but artists just the same. And you're going to hear all about that in a few minutes. And we are both most comfortable living in the past, specifically the 1970s. I am building my time machine as we speak. And I know my friend Mary will be my co-pilot. There will be no questions asked. She will come along for the ride. So what kind of art does Mary do? She is a very creative person in the world of music. She's a lyricist, a composer, a singer, a piano player. She plays multiple other things, and she makes her life doing it. Now, she found a uniquely good way to combine her love of music and sharing music with her love of travel and for planet Earth itself. She creates these soundscapes using real sound from around the globe, which she records, and then adds her own musical score to. For a better idea of what the hell I'm talking about, here, take a listen. Everyone buckled up for this episode? You better be, because we may not have the time machine ready, but we are definitely taking a trip to the Arctic with Mary Edwards as our pilot. Well, the first time we were together, very different situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyone listening who doesn't know what we're talking about, go way back. I mean, way back. I think you were like episode 9 or 8. You're way back, like you were in the 2020 zone when the world was a different place. Yup.
Send them in the Wayback Machine and tell them to brace themselves.
The world was a crazy place.
The world is still crazy, but it's a manageable crazy now, isn't it? Because now we know to look for that next extra juicy layer of stuff, that viscous,
yes,
personality mashing, gnashy, gnarly, unctuous stuff that is humanity.
God, that's such a good way to put it.
Thank you.
And don't you think that is true, though? Because I think at the time, of the darkness. We're still in the dark period, people, but in the real dark time then. And that was a pretty dark time a couple years back. It's weird to say that, right?
It is. I mean, we found a way to function. We found a way to manage, but what it did, it strangely enabled people to, and I don't want to take any responsibility or accountability away from folks who should be behaving better, but there was just something about when you go inward, it's like the act of talking to yourself. You know, when we spend our day to day, you know, mumbling to ourselves about this, that, and the other, and we don't look particularly odd for doing it, but in context, there's just certain, you know, it became filterless nation. That's what happened.
Yeah, but also there was a degree of denial, even on my part. Like, oh
Oh
wait,
yeah.
what's happening? What's happening? Wait, what's happening? This can't be happening. And now I'm not in denial on anything. Like I mean, like the George Santos thing that's going on right now.
That's so silly, isn't it?
It's so silly. And I hope somebody's listening to this 5 years from now and is like, who? What?
Who?
That
Exactly.
clown? Literally, like
You took the words right out of my mouth. He is Barnum and Bailey personified. Yeah. Yeah.
And they're blaming everyone blames other people. Anyway, so listen. So if you're listening to this, Mary was a guest a few years back. Different story. Wonderful podcast for us to have on a very difficult conversation. She's here today for a whole other reason, which we barely touched upon. So we're going to start wide and go in like this. Mary, what's the first song you remember hearing? What's the first song you remember singing?
Ooh, ever from the time I was a child?
Yeah.
The first song I remember hearing was Love is Blue by, no, is it Mariette, the composer? It was an instrumental version. Din, 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 din. And I have this really wild memory. I get teased a lot for this because I have this memory of like I can detail everything down to like, oh, I saw colors, I know what I was wearing. I mean, I came home from the hospital, and I swear that was the first song that I heard when I entered. I'm not kidding you. I have this bizarre memory that goes back to times that people shouldn't be even remembering things, especially at the age that I'm at now.
I was going to say this is a good thing.
Which is only 27.
I know, and I'm 22.
Right, there you are.
This joke never gets old. I do this joke on here all the time.
No, I'm happily at my midlife. I'm going through what I call a midlife chrysalis. I am not having a crisis. I turned 55 last September. 2022 was this real roller coaster of a year for me, because I had no issue turning whatever age I was going to be turning, because we can only move forward, right, Steve?
Right.
And I feel young forever, in part because of the music that I refer to from my earlier times. I live in a world that is constantly mid-70s. I live in a world that is, you know, I'm forever, I feel forever young, even when I wake up in the morning and say, ooh, what's that?
Well, let me hold you for a second. Because there's two things I want to say. First of all, anyone who ever says they're having a midlife crisis, in your case, I'd be like, do you really want to live to 110? That's what I'd say about a midlife crisis.
Right. And I feel like I'm experiencing the opposite or the inverse of that, which is I'm having a midlife chrysalis. I have come up on this next phase of my delicious womanhood where I feel like, okay, whatever tools I have to work with now, they're great. They're mine. And I don't want to be 26 again.
And that's why you're here, because we're going to talk about Mary Edwards. Everywhere We Are is the Farthest Place, a sound installation performance on the transforming Arctic landscape. Black woman went to the Arctic.
That's right.
Black woman in the Arctic, people. Okay, wait a minute. Let's get this clear to everybody. You went up or down? You went to Antarctic
I
or
went up,
Antarctica? You went up. You went to the
up.
Antarctic, so that's up.
No. I went to the Arctic.
Oh, Arctic is up.
Just think like the
Opposite.
Antarctic is the opposite. Yes,
Okay.
and I get that a lot because it's just the idea of going to some cold, remote place besides the inside of my ice box for a change.
How did this happen?
Okay, so yeah, I'll give you the long and I'll give you the tall and skinny, the long and short, whatever. When I was a kid, I was always fascinated with traveling to what I imagined to be the like the far reaches, whether it be the deserts or the Arctic or the Antarctic. And one year for a birthday gift, my parents got me a subscription to National Geographic, and the first issue that came in on that subscription was the Arctic edition. So now the Arctic can encompass everything that is around the that sort of top layer of the globe, which is the Arctic can be Canadian, the Arctic can be Russian, it can be Norwegian, anything that's up there. And there was this one image that was so vivid to me. It was of a group of scientists on these Zodiac boats, those like black dinghies that you sort of ride independently from your larger boat craft. And I just envisioned myself in that Zodiac doing some kind of important work. Now, mind you, I was very young. I was very much into science. But as I got older, even though arts and sciences are not independent of each other, despite what people might think, they're very important to each other. But I leaned more towards the arts. And I just couldn't imagine as I got older, like, well, how am I ever going to get to the Arctic and do that important work on a Zodiac if I don't have the leanings of a scientist and I'm not going in that direction? And it just kind of sat with me that like maybe someday I'll get up there. I'm not sure how. And then I found out about this artist residency some years ago called the Arctic Circle Residency. I was reading this article about a woman who was a painter who had gone on this residency. And I thought, well, she's an artist. I'm an artist. She's way up in the Arctic. How can I do that? I'm going to try for this. And I did. And I submitted an application because it is by selection. They don't just let everybody up there for this particular expedition. And I wasn't sure if I was going to get in on my first try, but I did. And I flew up to Norway. I flew up to the northernmost part of mainland Norway, and then eventually up to the northernmost part of the world, which is a territory of Norway called Svalbard. And it's this archipelago, and everything else is pure wilderness. Super glaciers, polar bears, narwhals, which I unfortunately did not see, but I know that they're there. Beluga whales, which I was able to record. And
did you bring a coat? What kind of coat did you bring?
Oh, what kind of coat? I brought layers. You can bring a parka. Yeah, I brought a coat. I brought a black llama mink. And a pair of Jimmy shoes.
You made Jaja very proud.
I did. So New York is where I'd rather stay.
Let me ask you this really quickly though. Who like met you there when you got there? Were you with a team of people? Did you bring your own equipment? Did they? Yeah, talk to us about that.
Okay, so yes to all of it. So there were a number of artists, scientists, architects, writers who have applied to this, and they get hundreds of applications every year. And so they whittle it down to, they break it down into smaller cohorts for those who get accepted. And for each cohort, it's only about 28 people. So out of like hundreds of applications, like less than 30 of us are chosen. So it's a real privilege. And I'm up there with the best of the best. I'm up there with some really incredible talent who are interested in the sciences of the Arctic or the Arctic culture, and everybody goes up there with a different idea for a project. So you're all responsible for whatever it is you need to bring to make whatever project you want to do possible. So for me, it was sound, and I was also there with a few other people who did sound work, and we worked really well together. And even those of us who had different ideas, we had really great conversations for the course of the month that we were together. And so we all flew up to the mainland. Then we also got on a boat called the Antigua, which is a ice class barkentine 3-sail ship that can basically it's not a traditional ice cutter. It's not one of those large ships like you see on like in that movie with Kate Blanchett, Where Have You Gone, Bernadette? It wasn't one of those large tankers.
Nice. And it has a random Caribbean island name or a
Oh, I
bay.
know.
Yeah. It's a
Right.
bay down in keep going.
Exactly. Well, the reason why they call it the Antigua was because when the ship was built in 1957, it was built with the intention of sailing all around and particularly down into the Caribbean, but it started getting used or was probably usurped for more Nordic passages. But they kept the name. I think that's the history. That's what I learned about that. And this boat is really, really sturdy. So it's got this like great mid-century feel. It's not very fancy, but it's not terribly rustic either. So it's just enough to accommodate all of us. It was a little tight, but it was wonderful to be with everybody, and nobody killed anybody. That was the best part.
Well done. There was no
There were
murder.
there were no murders on the Barents Sea.
Well, Jonathan and Jennifer Hart would not approve, but okay.
I know, it's like, how are we supposed to have a show if nobody dies? So
Wait, let me ask you a quick question. Did you bring most of the equipment yourself, or did they supply some equipment?
No, we came with our own equipment. I came with my Zoom recorder and my microphones and whatever else I needed to gather sound. My hydrophones, those are the ones that you can, dip into the water. And I had a 30-foot cord, so I went way, way down into the fjords and was able to gather these amazing sounds, record them, and take them back to my studio. And I mixed that down with other natural sounds. I had the good fortune of being around some beluga whales for a good few hours in this one particular fjord that we had landed in. We brought our own equipment, record all of this sort of natural data, and then create something with it.
Okay, speaking of that, that's my question. When you have a song you're going to create, most songs have a story, most songs have a message. Did you have a story in mind, a message in mind? Did you pitch that to them? Or did you say, I'm going to collect all this and create the soundscape? And get what I'm saying? Did it come together for you in advance when you were figuring it out? Or was it more behind, as you put it together?
Well, I had a general idea about wanting to create something as an homage to the Arctic landscape. But when I was there, I found things sort of breaking down into smaller projects, which I was really happy about. So this is the first of several ideas that I wanted to execute. And this one is, it is telling a story in a sense. There's a lot of talk about climate change. We talk about, the good that we're trying to do in the world gone good. How can we give back to the environment? And there's a lot of distress and reactiveness around the melting of the glaciers or anything that is happening by way of flooding. Water is a big topic these days. And a lot of artists are going into this conversation with their music or with their visual art, their films. For me, it was looking at the situation and researching it to offer reassurance to people that, yes, we are largely responsible for the rapidity of things changing. However, if you look at the history of climate change, or you look at climate change on the chronology is arbitrary, because you can look at climate change as in what happened this week, what happened this month, what happened this year, 10 years, what happened in the last millennium. And at one time, the Arctic was tropical. How many people knew that? I only learned that recently. So that's part of my discussion to say, yes, we are going to undergo change. We happen to see a lot of it happening right before us. And the big question is, what can we do differently? And we've been making some kind of concerted effort. But there's also this level of acceptance to say the landscape is transforming.
What was the most challenging part of this expedition, of this adventure?
The most challenging part for me was accepting the finality of the stay, and to learn to accept that I'm not going to get everything that I imagined I'd get. That there are a lot of experiences that are happening at a clip. We're sailing through these fjords around this remote island, and that we have the opportunity every day to make landing and get out on these smaller boats and really investigate the landscape. And I didn't do every single one of them. There were days where I actually stayed on the boat because I wanted to have sort of that faraway observation of the land. There were days where it was so brutally cold that even with the layers, it wasn't so much about, there's no such thing as bad weather, it's bad clothing, right? And hence why I had to leave the high heels at home. But we were certainly equipped for it, but there were days where I just felt like I wanted to have a different relationship with where I was. And I struggled with FOMO, a lot, fear of missing out. And that became sort of the big joke with some of my cohort. Where they're like, "Oh, you're going to make landing today?" No, I think I'm going to stay on the boat. I might have FOMO, but I think I need to just take a day and thaw out. And then I'd go out the next day. So I found the finality of the trip challenging. That yes, who wouldn't want one more week in this magnificent place? I went to debunk these myths about what the Arctic looked like and sounded like. There's this idea that it's just white and it's ice, and but it's ice in all these different forms. It's various degrees of water melting and frozen, and it's so varietal, not only in appearance, visual appearance, but in sound. And that's what I went to do, was to gather something that the everyday person who doesn't live up there would experience and bring that back as part of a larger discussion by way of the soundscape. And also visually, and also audibly, there's sound. It's not that quiet. There are these enormous glaciers that are calving every few minutes. Big chunks of ice like falling into the sea and creating these gorgeous uproars and waves, and I was able to capture that as well.
Did it make you feel small? Did it make you feel like a perspective change of like what the world is when you come back to the world as we know it?
Yes, in an unusual way it did. When I made my first landing, when I got out of the Zodiac and got onto the land in, I don't know if it was Rochefjorden. I'm trying to remember the actual name of. They all have different names, and we leave that up to our Arctic guides to share that information with us, because there are things that are on the map, but you have to have a very specific map to get all that information. That when I made my first landing, I was in front of this one large glacier, and I said, "Well, this is what I dreamt of. This was the very thing that I dreamt of when I was a child, when I was looking at that National Geographic magazine and wishing I could encounter something that was just so magnificent that it made me feel small in the best way possible." And there was that, but there was also this really wild experience where one day we were out in the middle of the fjord recording sound in the water. I was using my hydrophones, I was dropping them in and monitoring the sound of the currents beneath the water level. And I looked up and I saw this one particular glacier. And at first it looked like it was close, but as I started really registering it visually, I said, "Oh my God, it feels like I could reach out and touch it." But in actuality, it's about 50 city blocks away from me. So there's that visual perception or misconception of distance. Like everything that you think is closer is actually further away. It's sort of the reverse of your car mirror. There's the idea that if if somebody makes a sound miles away on the larger ship from which we disembark to get into these zodiacs to go way out into the fjords towards land, because the boat itself can't anchor to land. It's just too dangerous. So the boat anchors in the middle of the fjord, and then we climb down into these boats, sail out, and get closer to the land or go on the land. You can actually hear people talking from the ship, even when in those moments of what you think is quiet. So there are all these myths about sound and vision, and at the end of the day, it's all science. It's that water can really carry sound in the most magnificent way.
How long is the total piece, and where is it? Where's it playing?
So right now, the piece is going to be about 50 minutes, and it's going to be playing up at the Spitsbergen Artist Center, which is on Longyearbyen, or in the city of Longyearbyen on Svalbard. And once I debut it there, I'm going to make it available online for anyone to listen to. But it's going to be performed live, partially live, because I'm going to be using something called a waterphone, which is an instrument that has a series of tines that form a circle on a chamber, and you can actually pour water into it, and you can use mallets or a bow, and it makes really haunting aquatic noises. You've probably heard the instrument in horror films. I think you've heard it in. I think it was used as far back as Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. When you hear that, because there is this screeching sensation that emanates from it. But when you pour water into it, it becomes more mellifluous. It becomes more. There's this amazing depth to the sound, and I thought, oh, this would be a perfect accompaniment to the natural sounds that I record. So the natural sounds that I record, I'm piecing them together in such a way that it still sounds like the environment. It's not done in the sense to make it sound synthetic or to sound like I'm doing some kind of a remix. Somebody can do that down the road, and that might be a lot of fun. But the purpose of this is to, as I've done with previous work where I've gone into a specific environment, recorded the sounds, and then brought them back to the studio, I pieced them together to create this sense of time. So let's say this piece I did for a river up in Massachusetts called, the piece was called Perseverance, and it was about a river called the Quikachan River. That's a 14-minute piece that's played on a loop. And what I did was I recorded the river at different times of the year to highlight all the different textures of the water in different weather conditions. And so when one listens to it, it sort of encapsulates, this is what it would be like to spend a year on the river, but you're listening to it in 14 minutes. And you're listening to it sort of out of the context of being on the river. You're listening to it in the gallery space. And in essence, I'm doing the same thing with this piece where I'm taking the sound from a few different fjords, piecing it together, and creating this wordless narrative. But then there is also a layer of, it's very, very subtle, but there is also a layer of conversation in there, whisperings, intonations. I've always been into cinematic scoring, and I've always been into the idea of creating cinematic audio. So it brings someone into this idea of a movie or film without the visual aid. So they can imagine themselves not only in a place, but that there's a story there. So it's wordless storytelling, in essence. And then I'll be playing on top of that with this waterphone and a keyboard to create another layer of sound tracking.
You were very close to your mom.
Yes.
Her name was Jewel. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Jewel, that's right.
And What would your mom, Jules, say about all this?
Well,
What's the first thing she would say when you called her up and said, "I'm going to the Arctic"?
she was my biggest cheerleader. She was my biggest cheerleader. I lost my mom last year. It's funny that I use different language around the idea of death. And I find myself when I say I lost her, I'm like, no, I didn't really lose her. She too transformed. Her energy is out there. She is now everywhere. And when my mom was in her body and we were having face to face conversations or on the phone conversations, my mom, from the time I was a child, she basically told me to do this. She didn't think anything was unattainable. And within whatever means she had, she would support my venture. And that's something that keeps me going with my art. That's something that really keeps me going with my practice and my profession, is that I had encouragement way from the beginning from this wonderful woman named Jewel. She, as a matter of fact, in her last weeks of life, she had a stroke, and we thought she would survive that stroke. So in the time of what we thought was going to be the recovery and rehabilitation period, I remember visiting her in the hospital, and I had come back from doing a project, and I walked in the room, and she goes, "There she is. I can say I am so proud of my daughter, the sound artist and composer. I am the proud mother of a sound artist and a composer." And that's all I will need for the rest of my life, Steve.
That's magic.
It's magic. It's magic. We were very close. She herself had a creative bent, but she was an English teacher and a professor, and that was her craft. She was very good with language and understanding the English language, and she was an avid reader. We shared a lot of that. She was very big on encouraging me to read as a means of travel, as was my dad. And my dad did not live long enough to see a whole lot of what I'm doing now launch, but he was right there at the very beginning when I had my first singer-songwriter gigs. And he too would express that he was proud. But the nicest thing that I remember from my youth was that my parents always said, "You can and should be an artist. There's no reason why you can't. It's just as viable as anything else."
Where can people find you online to follow you and learn more?
Learn more about me through several links. You can find me on maryedwardsmusic.com. You can find me on Bandcamp under Mary Edwards or Mary Edwards Music. You can find me on Instagram and just check out my daily meanderings and my daily musings. And it's not all music all the time. It's life stuff. It's music. It's sound art. It's all of it. And it's a party in there. It's like a little party in there. It's very, every day. Hey, come over and have some tea. It's a nice place to be. So come see me on Instagram. Come see me on TikTok. Come see me on, well, if anybody's still using Facebook, I'm hanging out there too. I keep things as social and socially lubricated as possible. Very much like the 70s. It's socially lubricated.
We close the show with 2 questions. You've already answered them before. We'll have to go back and see if you answer them the same. Question number 1 is, who inspires you?
I think last time I said my mom. But gosh, Steve, can it be more than one person?
Of course.
Burt Bacharach, Carole King, Roberta Flack, Lori Lieberman, God, Camille Basio, my friends, my family, Gosh, John Luther Adams. I feel like I'm in an award show.
I was about to say it, but I didn't want to say it.
The music is gonna start
Playing you
playing, and
off.
I'm gonna get yanked off with a cane. Yeah, just you know what? It's who inspires me, or what about people inspire me. I can answer that question with one answer:
Sure.
love. I'm driven by love.
And the final question is not a question. It is a statement to finish. Do not sing it. I asked you not to sing it last time. I can't afford the rights to it. Tell me something good.
Tell you something good. That despite all the complications and complexities that we endure, there is so much more magic that overrules that, and so much more, self-determination that can help us push through those moments of adversity. Try it on. It's really I'd say empowering. No, it just gives you a lot of agency. Go for your dreams, people. Go for the gold.
Thank you, Mary, for sharing your good. You are welcome back anytime. Next time on World Gone Good.
My favorite kind of quote is, if you save one life, you'll save the world entire. So I'm a strong believer in that. If everybody do their part, will be a much better place, right? So my message to people right now would be, it's a really bad situation, and if you want to save a life, just keep your dog, please.
Alexandra Schiffer saves the dogs no one else wants through her organization, I Stand With My Pack. But this is more than just another rescue story. This is a story of one woman's goal to change how we as humans see the world. She wants to make this place a little less about disposability and more about connection. Alexandra believes that's the key, connecting back with each other, our pets, and the planet. I look forward to sharing our very connected, good conversation on our next episode. Until then, be good.